Hello, my name is James, and I'm here to give you an in-depth outline of my expansion pack for Star Trek Attack Wing called Tactical Command Expansion. This is not a sanctioned expansion, but rather just something that I made at home for the purposes of recreation, but I wanted to get people's input on it. The primary difference between my expansion and the original game is that the original game defines the ship with a card that you may tack on attachment cards such as captains, weapons, technical upgrades, and crew to define the ship's abilities, whereas mine takes on a Starfleet Command 3 or Bridge Commander approach in that I laid out all your ship's abilities and settings in the form of a command console. The console itself is rather neatly organized, having your hull integrity bar, your shield status bar, your weapons, ship's special ability, the class of your ship, the name of your ship and its fleet value, your auxiliary power management setting bar, and your action tabs, as well as your targeting screen. Your ship's basic actions. Your ship's basic actions are listed in the bottom right-hand corner of the hull integrity bar. Your same 4, 1, 4, and 5 for the USS Enterprise. The ship's hull integrity bar is left blank. However, you would use it to show how much damage you have against the ship. Rather than using cards like you did before, you would use instead what was formerly used as the critical hit markers, lining these across the bar until they reached the value of your hull integrity, at which point the ship would be destroyed. Your shield bar simply just holds the shield tokens to allow you easy reading of your ship's status. Moving on to weapons, you have your primary weapon, which is your phasers, which has a damage value of 4, a firing arc of 360 degrees, at a range of 2, which I did for balancing purposes. Your ship's secondary weapon, like an attack wing, would be a weapon that you would have to disable after firing. These are photon torpedoes with a damage of 5, range 2 to 3, and firing arcs are forward and aft. Like in the original Attack Wing game, the rules for this weapon is the same. Turn one crosshair, or battle stations, into a critical hit. The ship's special ability, being that it's an Enterprise and there are more powerful ships on the board than this one, are course change. Disable. When it's your ship's turn to move, plot a new course on your dial. Treat any move as red. So this would basically be a get out of the way, or you know what I mean. Anyway, continuing on, to make a move is also different from the original Attack Wing game, in that when you would move and then perform your action and attack at the same time. There is no separation between the action phase and the attack phase or the movement phase. They simply take their turns. Turns are taken based on the ship's fleet value, such as the Enterprise is 45 points. The total number of ships, or the total fleet value, doesn't make a difference in terms of who goes first, but rather the most powerful ship on the board, being the flagship, gets the authoritative move. Should two ships have the same fleet point value, you would then go by race. First Klingons, because they would be the ones that would start a fight, followed by the Federation, and then Romulans and so forth. When making a move, because everything's done at once, if you were to make a green move, your ship would be allowed an action following and an attack. Should you choose a white maneuver, your ship would be able to perform either an action or an attack. Should your ship move a red maneuver, your ship would be allowed neither, with an exception I will get to in a minute. Now, because course change is not an action but a ship's ability, you would still have the ability to perform either an action or an attack if... well, I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, an ability that I give your ships in my expansion pack is the ability to reroute auxiliary power to different subsystems for an added bonus. For instance, when you switch your power to weapons, you gain an extra attack die per round, which you can also stack up with a range 1 bonus for a total of 2 extra attack die. In addition, you also do not have to disable your secondary weapons when firing them. Only expend the target lock. By switching power to shields, at the end of the round when you would normally reactivate shields, you would also get to recharge a lost shield, which at the end of each turn you may do until your shield bar reaches its full health. By rerouting power to engines, you may perform red maneuvers as white maneuvers, which goes back to the course change. If you were to use the course change ability and your power was set on engines, you would be able to also follow that with an attack or an action, as that would be treated as a white move. In addition to this, you also gain the added bonus of using the battle stations on your defense die when your power is routed to engines, as your ship should naturally be more evasive. By switching power to sensors, you have the ability to acquire a target lock on any non-cloaked vessel anywhere on the map, as you would have increased sensor range. In addition, you may also be given the added benefit of using the battle stations on your red dice, as your shots should be more accurate. In addition to having the ability to route power to auxiliary subsystems, you also have the power to not just target lock an enemy vessel, but target lock an enemy subsystems as well, by switching your targeting key from hull to weapons, shields, engines, or sensors. When doing this, you would acquire a target lock as normal as an action by declaring that the Enterprise is target locking the Warbird. At the same time, you may also announce that you are targeting a specific subsystem. Any damage received to the ship through the shields would go against that system and not against the ship's hull value. In that if you rolled 4 red dice that all hit the system rather than shields, or if the ship had no shields, just go to the system itself, they would all count against that ship's specific targeted subsystem. You only need 2 hits to disable it, and further hits wouldn't be counted against the system. To show you, assuming that this ship has no shields, the Warbird, if I targeted the ship's weapon systems and scored 2 hits, it would be disabled. When that system is disabled, you would lose the ability to perform certain actions. Certain actions such as an attack, or even the use of your cloak, as your cloaking device is tied into your weapons array. As an action, you must begin to repair that system. Your first step would be to remove the disabled key and place on it instead a damaged key. A damaged key would normally be placed on the system should it receive only 1 hit instead of 2, but would also be a step in repairing the ship, as you would be taking 1 step away from being disabled. When the damaged key is on a specific subsystem, in this case weapons, the weapons would still be functional, but you would not be able to route auxiliary power to that system until you took another subsequent action of taking the damaged key off, making it a two-step repair. Once that system has been repaired, you may place your auxiliary power key on that system. Should your power key have been on the system when it was disabled or damaged, you would have to remove it from the ship itself and then instead place either a damaged or disabled key accordingly. You would then have to route auxiliary power to a different system should you choose to repair that system later. It's all up to you, though. Your ship also has the ability of using a tractor beam. In my game, you can use a tractor beam either passively or offensively. I'll demonstrate. By using the tractor beam offensively, you would charge the system by placing the tractor beam key on your ship. It can stay on your ship until you use it. To use the tractor beam offensively, when you are within range 1 of an opponent that you are about to fire upon, you may say that you are going to use the tractor beam to lower the enemy's defense value by 1 point, at which case that would expend your tractor beam. To use it passively, if you are dragging either an asteroid or a ship that has its engines disabled, you would do so by firing arcs, doesn't matter, but when you are within range 1 of the ship that you would like to tow, begin by placing your target lock key on that ship to signify which vessel is towing which vessel, E and E. And then place your tractor beam token on top of the target lock. When the Enterprise moves, not at warp, but when the Enterprise just makes a regular move, or even a red move, it may place the ship that it is dragging anywhere within range 1 of that ship in the same turn. The tractor beam may also stay engaged on the ship until the ship either repairs its engines or until the Enterprise would make a move that would not allow the tractor beam to be used, such as warp or evasive maneuvers. Your ship also has the ability to perform evasive maneuvers. However, evasive maneuvers carries with it a different effect than it did in the original game, in that you get to keep the token on your ship until you perform an action that would negate the use of evasive maneuvers, such as the tractor beam or warp function. And another difference would be that you don't get an automatic evade. It simply increases your defense value by 1 dice. This can be co-witnessed by having your power on engines, which would give you not just 2 dice, but the ability to use the battle stations on your defensive dice, which gives you a pretty good chance of evasion. You can further increase your evasion by using a planet's atmosphere as cover. To do so, you would take your ship completely over the planet, in that its base would be covered on all ends by the planet's atmosphere. This signifies that you are flying through the planet's atmosphere to gain evasiveness, in which case you would gain an additional defensive die. When you are flying through a planet, you may attack another ship at any normal range. However, when you attack, because you are firing through the same atmosphere that you are taking cover in, that ship, being the Warbird in this case, would gain an extra defensive die as well. Moving on to the use of critical hits. When a ship fires on another ship without a target lock, or when target locking the ship's hull, a critical hit, you would then have to roll an action dice to figure out where that hit landed on the ship, should it not have been evaded. This would be your action dice, a regular 6-sided dice, and they're color-coded according to the ship's race, this being Federation. Assuming I rolled a critical hit. If I rolled a 1, that would go against System 1, which would be weapons, and that would just be tally marked as 1 regular hit to the weapons array. A 2 would go to shields, 3 to engines, 4 to sensors, 5 to hull, and 6 would count against the ship's warp core. If you scored a single hit against the ship's warp core, that would be signified by placing an auxiliary power key or damage key to the ship itself rather than the system. For obvious reasons, you can't target lock the ship's warp core. Should you score 2 hits against the ship's warp core, that ship would then be destroyed. A critical hit, when you have another system target locked, would count as 2 regular hits against that system. In that, if the system was target locked, in this scenario, by rolling a critical hit, that would count as 2 hits against that system rather than 1. Because of the magnitude that the critical hit function brings to the game, critical hits are the first to be evaded when rolling your evasion die, and then your regular hits. I'm now going to demonstrate the warp function. The warp function is an action, in that you would make your move first before declaring it. To go to warp, well, rather, let's start with the movement. If I moved a 1, being a green maneuver for demonstrational purposes, I would make that move, being a 1. If I decided that I wanted to go to warp, I would declare a warp function, and to use the warp function, you would start by disabling your shields, moving them all to red, which I'm not going to do for time purposes, and then using your rangefinder as a movement template, you would move from one end to the other end, effectively moving your ship 1 foot. Being that this was a green maneuver, you can also fire in this round, effectively performing the Picard maneuver. Second to last of ship's normal abilities is the use of a boarding party action, in that you can actually take over an enemy ship in my game. To do so, select a ship that you would like to board within range 1 that has no shields. You would then lower your shields all to red for that round, and then roll your action dice. I rolled a 3. To signify that they are fighting back, the opponent that you were trying to capture would roll their action dice, green for Romulan, and they rolled a 1. Now, in this scenario, you would gain control of their ship, in which case you would be handed their movement dial to signify that you have control of their ship. They still get to keep their board because it's a pain in the ass to move that around. When you capture a ship, if that ship has not moved yet, you would have to perform the same movement that they were about to move. However, you would get to dictate the ship's action or attack. At the next round, if you have control of their ship, when it's that ship's turn to move, they may roll for their ship back, signifying that your boarding party on their bridge is significantly less powerful than the crew on board the ship, so the crew on the rest of the ship could actually take the ship back over. To do that, when it's the ship's turn, they would roll their dice first, being a 3, and then you would roll to maintain control, a 3, in which case you would re-roll. Alright, you still gain control of that ship, in this case. Now, should they have rolled a 5, and you rolled a 2, they would gain their movement dial back, but they would have to move the same movement that you chose for them to make, such as when you captured it. going back to the warp, a rule that I forgot about. To use warp, you would have to lower your shields in order to achieve warp. You may still warp without shields, having no shields on your board, in that you would have to roll a red dice against yourself to see if you take damage from going to warp without any protection. Just a side note. Switching to the Warbird, to demonstrate the last of the abilities, would be the use of your Cloak. Cloak carries with it the same effect as it did in the original Attackwing game, in that it sticks with your ship, you place it green side up, and you would turn off all of your shields for the purposes of going into Cloak. Going into Cloak adds your defense value by 4, which you may also combine by having your engines, having your power routed to engines. Doing this would allow you the use of your green battle stations, effectively making your Warbird impossible to hit, unless you really sucked. The difference in Cloak is that when you fire, your ship then becomes a little easier to spot. When the Cloak token is on red, your defense value returns to 2. However, since your ship is in partial Cloak, another ship that would move after your Warbird would not be able to target lock you, only fire at you with your lowered defense value. At the end of that round, when you would reactivate or recharge shields, you would then move this back to your board as normal. When in Cloak, you also have the added bonus of being able to perform the same action of the sensor echo. So I'm not going to go into that because you already know about that. Anyway, this is my demonstrational video on Star Trek Attackwing Tactical Command Expansion. Let me know what you think about it.